Welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Ann Arbor, the seeds of which were planted in 1865 and have continued to grow and flourish for over 150 years now. This is our first gathering of 2021. Welcome. I'm glad you are here. I'm Reverend Theresa Rohlck, Congregational Chaplain and Director of the Handbell Choir. I am joined in worship today by our team who are coming to you from their various corners of the community. Dr. Glen Rideout, Director of Worship and Music, Allison Halerz, Pianist-in-Residence, Reverend Cassandra Hartley, Executive Minister, Reverend Manish Mishra-Marzetti, Senior Minister, and a very special welcome to Reverend Beland, who is coming to us from her Unitarian Universalist community in New Hampshire. The chalice is perhaps one of the most recognizable symbols of Unitarian Universalism. I have several lapel pins that have different chalices on them, and I intentionally wear them when I work at the hospital as a chaplain. I imagine that they might perhaps give comfort or even relief to a patient who sees the pin and understands what it represents. And the chalice represents our values, our belief in the inherent worth and dignity of every person, and our work towards peace and justice in the world. And so, as we light a chalice at the beginning of our time of worship together, we are reminded of these things. And the ritual of lighting the chalice together connects us to Unitarian Universalists across time and space. Today, I would like to invite Lissa Oliver and Greg Peterson into this worship space to light the chalice for us. Will you join them in saying our chalice lighting words?
We light this chalice for the light of truth. We light this chalice for the warmth of love. We light this chalice for the energy of action. We light this chalice for the harmony of peace.
I've had different religious identities at different points in my life, but as a Unitarian Universalist, it is important to me that this faith does not demand an adherence to a single creed or belief, but it prioritizes covenant. And covenants are the promises we make to each other, and they tell us how to be in relationship with each other. And for me, the holy exists in those relationships. So if you are here for the very first time, or if the words of this covenant have very deep roots for you, I invite you to speak with intention the words of our covenant together. Let us say together, the spirit of this church is love, and service is its law. This is our covenant with each other, to dwell together in peace, to search for truth in love, and to help one another. Welcome, each and all. It matters that you are here. We are gathered for worship.
This time together, we're focused on what it takes to grow our community well. In that light, here are a few opportunities available to help in the community right away. Invitations have gone out to members and pledging friends to join Realm, our new hub for contact and connection. The better we connect, the better we can hold each other in care. So take a moment today. Check our website, UUAA.org, and weekly news for help getting started. And pursuant to the bylaws which govern us, I announce the upcoming congregational meeting. Our board will lead in 2 weeks via Zoom. The board will offer a financial update for 2021, talk about plans in the works, and catch us up on the congregational vision work, or Vision 2050. The board's coming to us next week with details on how to register and join the meeting. But for now, if you're planning to use Zoom on a computer, as opposed to a smartphone or a tablet, say, please use Zoom's Check for Updates feature to make sure that you've gotten the most recent version. And as a part of our Sharing the Collection program, we are raising money today to benefit Habitat for Humanity of Washtenaw County. Here's a video some of our community members made to share the good news of Habitat's work in the world.
UUAA has been working with Habitat since 1998 or 99, so it's been 21 years. And this year, because of COVID, we couldn't have volunteers in the spring. Actually, we couldn't have any until July. So this year, so far, we've had full crews in all of our 5 days. And we've had very good financial support also. Normally, we have 15 churches get together to work on a house, to rehabilitate it. Today is all UUAA volunteers. One thing I like about Habitat is it's not really a charity. The people that buy these houses actually buy the house. And so they really take pride in the house. And neighborhoods that we used to work in, the property value has gone up because of the Habitat houses. We can't afford to get a house in there anymore.
Hello, friends at UUAA. I'm Leah Borst with Habitat for Humanity of Huron Valley. First, I'd like to thank you all for continuing to support us year after year, but especially during COVID-19 times. It is through the support of you, both volunteers and donations, that we are able to continue critical work in our community. In the last year, we closed 7 homes, served 615 households through our home improvement program, and helped more than 380 families with financial counseling. We successfully hosted thousands of volunteers on our sites, including those at UUAA, with safe COVID-19 measures in place. During the COVID-19 crisis, we learned that low-income households are particularly at risk as a result of their economic instability. So we helped communities recover by converting our free little libraries into food pantries stocked with essential items. We built a produce stand with the help of UUAA volunteers to help get fresh produce into the hands of those who needed it most. We started our mortgage payment relief fund to help our homeowners experiencing financial uncertainty to keep their mortgage payments up to date. However, the pandemic has and will continue to impact our programs, especially when it comes to the volunteers who helped. That's why your financial support is needed now more than ever. Even a $25 donation can help us cover the cost of a lost volunteer. You are helping us build better neighborhoods. You're helping us create affordable housing and sustainable communities for families of low income in Washtenaw County. We couldn't do this without partners like you, and we look forward to building with you again in 2021.
Sometimes democracy looks shiny, feels easy, slips on. But most of it is made of small choices to care when you could not care, to nurture the weed patch until the earth brings fruit. Democracy means people power. Nothing changes when no one shows up to change. everything changes, when everyone shows up to change. The choice about tomorrow, for now, is yours and mine. For now, it belongs to us. What will we grow? Here's a story.
Errol's Garden by Gillian Hibbs. I'm really good at growing things. I'm so good at it that we started running out of room at home. What I really wanted was a real garden. I dreamed about my garden a lot. Then one day I noticed something I had never seen before. I always thought that we lived on the top floor, but there was another button. And there was a roof. I couldn't believe I hadn't seen it before. This was the perfect spot for the garden. I told Dad and Tia right away. We learned as much as we could about roof gardens. But we needed help. Luckily, everyone else was just as excited as me. We made a plan. Everyone had different things to bring, which was good, because there were lots of different things to do. And there still are. I love picking all the fruit and vegetables. I really love carrots. Gardens are fun because they are always changing. So, what will we grow next year? The end.
Good morning. And on this occasion of our seeing virtually one another for the first time in this new year, let me offer my wish that 2021 be a year of health and wellness, well-being, joy, and possibility for each and every one of us, as well as our nation. I almost hesitate from saying Happy New Year, given the context of the week that we have just experienced with such disruption and violence. In recognition of that, and the many feelings that any one of us may have navigated in the week that has ended, I want to invite you into a brief moment of pastoral prayer with me for our nation. If you would, I invite you to join me in a time of meditation, stillness, reflection, prayer, whatever lens speaks to you and works for you. Would you join me? Holy One, essence of this universe that we live in, that spark of wisdom and divinity that resides inside each and every one of us, as we embark on a new year, our hearts long to rest in the wisdom and in the love, in the confident, still sense of being that is you, that is the universe all around us of which we are a part. We have held with sadness in our hearts the witnessing of how the voices of deceit and misinformation can push us as human beings toward violence, towards the desecration of the landmarks of democracy. We pray, we hope fervently in our hearts that this land that has stood for being a people and a place of diversity and opportunity, a land that has contained multitudes, people of all different experiences, perspectives, walks of life, coming together to live into their best potential, that in this new year, we can reclaim the spirit of being that people. The people who pause before attacking one another, before using language and words that demean one another. The people who take the time to breathe and invite a deeper knowing. Invite the questions that expand relationship rather than shut it down. We know that we are a people of justice, for our faith and our tradition has been committed to that for decades, if not centuries. And that passion and that fire and that longing for building a more just and equitable world will remain unquenched. We will continue to do the day-to-day work that is needed to build a planet transformed by our care, one in which environmental justice and climate justice can be worked towards and realized, one in which the dignity of every human being, racial justice, diversity in all of its human shapes, sizes, and forms come together. And the richness of that expands and builds us up instead of tearing us down. For we know that it can. We have been that people that know how to tackle really hard problems and come together over and over again for the greater good. And so as we embark on this new year, we hold collectively our longing to be the better angels that we know reside in each and every one of us. We commit ourselves to that. We ask even the blades of grass to witness our commitment and gently guide our feet on that path of goodness, community, and justice for all. May it be so. This congregational year, our community has been fortunate to have in its midst a seminary classmate and longtime friend of mine, Reverend Amber Beland, who, in addition to being an ordained Unitarian Universalist minister, is currently in the midst of pursuing credentialing at the PhD level in the field of organizational psychology. As part of Reverend Amber's academic program, she has been engaged in a consultancy internship, essentially a field placement with our community, exploring the themes of healthy communication, healthy relationship, and healthy conflict in community. How are those needs navigated? The first half of Reverend Amber's work in our community has involved getting to know us better as a community and to develop some initial impressions of ways in which we might learn and grow together. This dovetails with the fact that there are particular times of year, January being one of them, when visitors will often drop in on congregations and communities to check them out and get to know what they are about. It's in that spirit that this Sunday we'll be exploring in dialogue with Reverend Amber some questions related to Unitarian Universalist identity and culture. I invite you to join us now as we enter into that time of dialogue and shared reflection. Reverend Amber, one of the observations or insights emerging from your consultancy with UUAA is that it might be meaningful for us as a congregation to deepen our sense of connection to Unitarian Universalist culture and identity. As an individual who grew up within Unitarian Universalism, you are a lifelong Unitarian Universalist. Do you experience Unitarian Universalism as having a unique or a specific culture and identity? If so, what informs and defines that culture and identity for you? Could you share an example or two of what constitutes Unitarian Universalist culture and identity for you, and why those examples are meaningful?
It is so good to talk to you, Manish, about my experience as being a Unitarian Universalist. I was very blessed to be able to come to Unitarian Universalism before I could even remember. My parents, like many others, came to the church when I was 18 months old, and they were seeking a way to create a meaning for me as a person in the world. And I don't even remember a time when I wasn't Unitarian Universalist. So you asked me about whether I think Unitarian Universalism has a culture and identity that is specific to it. And I would say that I think that the reason that I think that I'm culturally Unitarian Universalist, as much as I am religiously Unitarian Universalist, is because everything about Unitarian Universalism actually permeates my life. I make all my decisions. I consider everything in my life to be connected to Unitarian Universalism. And so I think, like many born UUs, we think about the fact that everything that we do passes through Unitarian Universalist values and understandings. I also think you asked me about what informs and defines that culture for me. And so I think I would look at it in a few ways. One thing that always has been very important to me is the connection of the Unitarian side and Universalist side. And some people have said in the past that Unitarians are the intellectuals, the ones that are in their heads, and that Universalists are the heart. And so that has always been something that I've held as important for me as a Unitarian Universalist. I think that the connection of the way that we think about things and the way that we feel about things is a very important piece of Unitarian Universalism, and that we have inherited both of those pieces from our own heritage. I also think that there is something to be said for the way that Unitarian Universalism informs how we live. So for me, Unitarian Universalism tells me how to live here on the earth. And so when we gather in community, we talk about the important things about how to serve others, how to do social justice work. And so those pieces, the how do we live here on the earth, that's the stuff that I think we do really well in community. And I think at the same time, there is such freedom in Unitarian Universalism to really be able to have the chance to make our own way as far as our spiritual practice goes. And so for Unitarian Universalism, there is an openness in the choices that we make as individuals as far as what fills us and what makes sense. We get to ask all of the questions, and the questions have endless answers, and all of those answers are valid answers. So I think that for me, Unitarian Universalism is rooted in community, because together we make meaning of the world, but it also has that individual component where each one of us gets to really choose how we understand the spiritual, the ethical, the moral. And so for me, those are some of the founding cultural and religious values for Unitarian Universalism that matter immensely to me. So I think one other thing that I have been reflecting on is the fact that Unitarian Universalism is grounded in many different principles and purposes, and I think that has a huge impact on who we are, and together we create our meaning.
Unitarian Universalism is inherently a permissive and inclusive tradition, coherent with the broad framework of our 7 ethically defined principles and our 5 fairly all-encompassing sources. One can bring any set of understandings, beliefs, or the lack thereof, stories, narratives, scripture, science, spiritually defined or secularly defined approaches to one's Unitarian Universalist experience. Unitarian Universalism, in my experience, is one of, if not the, intentionally broadest spiritual ethical traditions that exists. How do you, Reverend Amber, understand this vast diversity of approach in light of your commitment to what you consider the core facets of Unitarian Universalist culture and identity?
So I completely agree with you that Unitarian Universalism is inherently a very wide open religion and cultural experience. I think that Unitarian Universalism gives us a great gift in that there isn't one way up the mountain, there isn't one path that's correct, there isn't one way that we have to choose. I think it's very different from many other religious beliefs and religious systems because it does have that component where we are called into seeking our own answers to questions rather than given them by some religious authority or some religious book. It also makes us expansive in that we have the opportunity to read every book, and we have the opportunity to read things like poems and poetry and plays and movies, and for all of those to be equally meaningful in our lives. And I think that's a very different experience from the majority religions that are around us. I think that's also something that sometimes confuses people about Unitarian Universalism. But for me, it is a key component of why I think that I understand the world in a more expansive way. I think when I was very young, we did a lot of work around how to both find our own way, but also respect other people's paths. And so that is a piece of the puzzle that makes us very able to connect to other people. I think also that when you look at the principles, there's a lot of call in there to live an ethical life, to live a moral life. Maybe not in the way that other religions understand morality, but I think that the principles help us to understand how we should live here on the earth and the things that we should do to help others. So, for example, one of the things that has always really connected me to other people is the web of life. And so the web of life for me is the way in which all of us are connected, not just the humans on earth, but all of the animals and all of the other beings and the world itself and the land itself. And I think that is some of what calls us to do so much climate justice and other social justice work. And I think it's that what other religions would call mission work is very often connected to people, and ours is much more expansive, and we can go beyond the people in the world and help the world itself. And so I think the principles hold us together as Unitarian Universalists. I think if there's anything that we may be able to hold in common and not fuss too much about, it's the principles, because they are overarching understandings of the world that I think we hold in common most often. The sources are actually what make us almost polytheistic, you could consider. They have every piece of the puzzle. And for me personally, I religiously kind of identify myself in many different camps. I would first and foremost always say that I'm Unitarian Universalist, again, because I was brought up in it and it is central to the way that I view the world and understand the world. But I think also I would say that I have a little bit of paganism, I have a lot of humanism, and I see the world in a way that opens up my eyes to possibility. And so I think Unitarian Universalism has a unique gift in that it really does allow us to be expansive. And I think it allows us to hold hope and care for other people, for the world. And also it reminds us to be mindful of the way that we're working with each other. It is uniquely American religion. It started here in America. And I think the democratic principles that we uphold in our principles come from that heritage, and again, come from the roots that we have as a denomination. And those things allow us to work together in congregations where the authority is shared. So the authority is between the minister and the people. And the people hold the church. We are congregational in polity, and we hold the church. And that allows us in all of our settings to continuously have conversations where we talk to each other, and ministers and members hold conversations, and we connect with each other through sermons and through other opportunities where we walk together. And I think that is a great gift of Unitarian Universalism. And I think that makes us extremely inclusive, not just in the religious sense, but also in the community sense. Each one of us can come to the table with different opinions, with different ideas, and with different understandings of the world, and all of those are celebrated. And we celebrate the fact that we can have the freedom to express those beliefs and the freedom to sometimes argue, but to find our way back to the center. And that is such an important piece in this world today.
Reverend Amber, given the immense diversity of style and approach contained within Unitarian Universalism, is it possible to fall in love with a niche approach to Unitarian Universalism and no longer be fundamentally committed to Unitarian Universalism broadly? For example, let me make up a scenario using myself as an example. Let's say that I draw on liberal progressive Hinduism as the lens from which I relate to Unitarian Universalism. I find this so meaningful and exciting that I begin insisting that other Unitarian Universalists need to interact with progressive Hinduism. I become pushy about it and even start to feel marginalized or maybe even oppressed when other UUs are not as passionate about progressive Hinduism as I am. At what point do I need to leave Unitarian Universalism and find a progressive Hindu community because that has become my core identity? How does one know whether one's core commitment is to Unitarian Universalism or whether my core commitment has actually evolved and now belongs to some other niche identity that I may have found and deepened, even if it's thanks to Unitarian Universalism?
Manish, I think you ask a very important question about how we define ourselves in Unitarian Universalism. And I think it's actually quite a complicated answer that I have. And my answer is offered in great kindness and love. And I want to say that for me, it would be very hard not to be Unitarian Universalist. Like I said at the beginning, that culture, the cultural part of it, is so embedded in my life and the choices I've made. The calling for me to become a minister is because my parents brought me to church before I was even able to form a thought. That they put me through religious education, that they held my house as a Unitarian Universalist based place, that it was embedded into everything that I did. So for me, it's hard in some ways to think about the fact that someone might be in Unitarian Universalism and find another path. But I do think that that's a very valid and actually quite often what happens for people. Some people find us as Unitarian Universalists. Some people find us because they are coming from no religion and they're trying to seek out a religious path. Some people find us when they have left another religion. And some people, a minority, but some of us grew up in it. And so this diversity that happens in our denominations allows us to find our own paths. Like I said in the other, when you asked the other question about the principles and the sources, I think the sources are so expansive that you can find a practice. Let's say, like you said, that you are now practicing Hinduism, and you feel drawn to that more than you do to Unitarian Universalism. So I think the question would be, At what point do you as a person feel like perhaps Unitarian Universalism is something that was a stopping place along the road, right? Rather than it is your main identity and the Hinduism might be your secondary identity. So I do think that there are circumstances where someone finds a path and it is a beautiful, meaningful path, and they feel like Unitarian Universalism was a part of that path, but now they need to go and be a part of that larger movement in a more expansive way. And so I do think when you ask, is there a point at which a person might belong to that other group? I think that's a very personal question and one that an individual would have to answer for themselves. But what I think doesn't happen in Unitarian Universalism very often is that we don't often say to someone, hey, if you feel like practicing Hinduism is more meaningful than coming to the Unitarian Universalist congregation, we should help you to find the right path for that. And so I think sometimes we have a fear that we're going to lose people, but if people are not feeling called to be with us and to be on the same journey as us, and have, through the expansiveness of Unitarian Universalism, found something that feeds their heart and their soul and their mind and their body, why wouldn't we encourage them to find a place where they can fully bloom into that? And so I think that that's a really important question. As I reflect on everything that's happened this week, I do think that there is something to be said for the way in which Unitarian Universalism can be a beacon for both hope and for expansiveness and communication. What we saw this week was very, very difficult to watch. And it was a breakdown in relationship, a breakdown in communication, and a group of people who didn't know how to express the things that they wanted to say, or express them in ways that were not ethical or moral. And so Unitarian Universalism can offer something to the world, which I think is very unique, in that when we're at our best, when our congregations are at our best, when we as Unitarian Universalists are at our best, we are able to connect with other people. We are able to bridge a distance between the ways that we see the world and the differences that we hold. And that is really important and needed right now, because each of us has to find a way to be able to continue the conversation. And so Unitarian Universalism offers a way to be in community, to reach across difference, and to value each other, even when we don't see eye to eye. And so I want to leave you with this idea that what we have and who we are is much more than just a religious belief. It is a way of life that we can take into the world that asks us to work on things like oppression, to stand up for people when they are being put in down and being treated badly, to stand up for climate changes and to fight for the rights of people. And I think that we are being called as a congregational group, as a denomination, to do more of this work and to model more of the ways in which you can disagree and yet be together in community. And that is such an important part of Unitarian Universalism, and it is such an important message, I think, right now in our world. So it has been wonderful having a conversation with you, Manish, and I want to offer blessings to everyone. Amen, blessed be, and may your week be a beautiful one.
Each one of us helps to form a part of many communities. And the coming days, the coming hours call us to do well by the families and circles of care which have opened to hold us. Here's how you can help this week. Give to Habitat for Humanity and help the human community find its way home. Give to UUAA's Minister's Discretionary Fund and help us to respond with grace to those who come with unexpected hardships this year. Sign up for an account on Realm, UUAA's new membership database, our hub for connection, contact, and care, now and beyond the virtual era. Mark your calendar for our congregational meeting 2 weeks from today. What drives us forward and what holds us back will both be in attendance. Which direction we choose depends on who shows up. This is what democracy looks like, but only if you care to bring democracy to life. And join us for social hour coming up right after the Amen. Have a conversation you might not otherwise encounter. Get to know the community and let us get to know you, one moment at a time, together. Peace in the world is stitched from patience, wisdom, craft, and courage in countless choices we'll make and most we'll never see. Build your faith to feed the world, and the flower will bring itself to fruit. Go now, and in good time, may you find home again. May the journey surprise and delight you. May it grow you up and bring you peace. Amen.